Nope.
Number 1. Hey everyone. I just created an account here so I can share this story. Maybe you'll find it interesting, or maybe you'll just find it boring. My friend and I have never been able to explain it, and most of the people we tell just laugh it off. We aren't really offended by people not taking it seriously, because nothing bad really came out of it. But maybe one of you will be able to provide more insight. So, my best friend and I, whom I'm still friends with to this day, were having a sleepover at his house. We live about a block away from each other, so we could hang out almost every weekend. Anyway, we were having a sleepover at his house, and we got to hang out in the living room that night. His house is packed, by the way, because he has a lot of family living in it. But that night, everyone else was asleep. We were on the couch, watching some paranormal TV show. I'm sitting on the big couch, in an upright position, and so is he. We had just poured ourselves a huge bowl of chips, and were having a good time. It had to be just after midnight, which was early for us, considering we typically stayed up till about 4 or 5 a.m. every weekend playing video games. And that's when things started to get weird. The next thing we know, we're both waking up the next late morning / early afternoon. We're covered in blankets, both in the fetal position, on the couch that we were on the night prior. We both wake up at the exact same time. Well, when I say wake up, it was more like jumping up more than a gradual awakening, and at which point we both look at each other in shock. I don't really remember the in-between details of what happened after that, but I remember asking, "Dude, do you remember going to sleep last night?" To which my friend replied, "No, I don't." The weirdest part was, the last thing we both remembered was laughing and having a good time. How do two people both go from being wide awake to not remembering anything and ending up asleep? We would have to get up, turn off the lights, throw the chips away, and grab the blankets. We were both 13 when this happened, which meant alcohol was not the root cause. Even if someone in the house came and did all of that stuff for us, why didn't one of us at least remember the process of going to bed? Occasionally one of us would start falling asleep while playing a game or something, but we would always wake up one another and ask, "Are you going to bed?" Even if the other one was knocked out by then. I can't remember how we reacted once we put all the pieces together, if we freaked out or continued to laugh, but we both recalled the story in the exact same way ever since. He and I have both done research on it ever since, and have found that missing time is a common symptom of abductions. I don't want to jump to that conclusion, as it is sort of crazy, but it does seem to explain the experience. If anyone else has any type of explanation, please feel free to let us know. Number 2. So, here's the situation. I live in southeastern Oklahoma, and some strange things have been occurring. What prompted me to make this post was the most recent events, both of which happened on the street I live on. The night before last, my brother and I were driving home after running to Walmart at about 1 a.m. He works the night shifts, so this is really the only time I ever get to see him. We live in the middle of the street, and while I was driving up that street towards our house, we saw something that at first looked like a shooting star flying above our car. I didn't think anything of it until tonight, when I saw something very similar. The one from the night before was incredibly bright and close to the car. As a matter of fact, it was so bright and moving so close that it actually lit up the interior of the car. What made us realize that it wasn't actually any type of shooting star was that it didn't have a tail of any kind. It was just moving steadily above our car until it disappeared seconds afterwards. The incident tonight involved an orb that flew over my car but didn't shoot by. It just stayed with us as we moved, but this time it didn't disappear. It just kept moving to the horizon until I couldn't see it anymore. I ran inside after parking the car and made sure everyone was safe in bed. Once again, this orb didn't have a tail and didn't behave like a shooting star. Both of these objects were flying far too low to be any type of common plane, and there was no bad weather to obscure my view. We also have a new dog that loses her mind at about 2 a.m. every night. Luckily, I know her past owner and asked if she had done this before. They told me that they'd never even heard her growl. I don't know what's going on, but I'd like other people's opinion and input. Also, if you know any way that I could protect my house and my family, I would greatly appreciate it. My brother's theory is that we're being scoped out and targeted for abduction. As crazy as that sounds, I'd rather not take any risks if I can avoid them. Number 3. I don't like to talk about this a lot, but I have been thinking about it lately, and I want to know if anyone else has experienced anything similar. I really want to know if anyone else has ever seen the Blue Room. I should start by saying that my earliest memory is from when I was about 18 months old. I would try to climb out of my crib and take off my onesie, as a lot of little kids do. I remember everything very clearly. My mom pinned my PJs on with a turtle safety pin that I could never get off because it was just too dang strong. This isn't relevant to the supposed encounters, but I feel like it's worth mentioning, since I hear most people's earliest memories are from when they're about 3 or 4, not 1.5. At around 2 or 3, I would often ask my parents where my, quote, other parents were. I seem to remember saying something like, "They look just like you, but they're not you." My father, who was a follower of the Buddhist faith, believed I was referring to something from a past life, and he was pretty pumped about that. I do have memories from a, quote, past life, but I don't remember these parents being a part of it. When I was about 4 or 5, some really weird things began to happen. I would be in my bed, and I would see my parents holding hands, walking into my room at night. They'd look over my bed, then smile at each other as if they were admiring me, like I was some type of great success. After a little bit of time, I would blink my eyes, and they would just be gone. There were even some rare occurrences where I blacked out. My parents didn't ever really hold hands, like, ever. Maybe that's what I meant when I was referring to them as my other parents. On other nights, I would get into bed, then I would blink and it would suddenly be morning. I wouldn't feel as if I had slept either. I wasn't exhausted, but I just felt like no time had passed at all. I would also see lights from outside my window, but I live in the middle of the woods. Now, it is possible that I'm confusing those memories with the times that we lived in the suburbs and an antenna was right outside my window, but I'm almost positive that the memories of the missing time occurred while we were in the house in the middle of the woods. Now, here's the part that makes me realize I may have been dealing with extraterrestrial life. Some nights, I would have dreams in the third-person perspective about being abducted by aliens, and I remember distinctly what my location looked like. It was a cylindrical, blue room, about the size of a classroom, with spotlights all around the floor, pointing at me. The floor was firm but spongy in texture, like gym pads. The light diffusion in the room was strange and almost didn't make sense to me. When I was in the room, I almost always had on my pajamas. The other lights in the room would flash on. I felt like I was being watched by more than one person or being. I would look around and see nobody, and then the floor would open up abruptly and I would fall back down. It almost felt like I was watching this happen through a camera or a fixed point in a room. I think in some of my dreams I would walk around, but then I would fall anyway. Being dropped down always gave me the sense that I was being examined to see if I was ready, like I was supposed to be preparing for something, and that being dropped meant that I wasn't ready yet or not eligible. I intuitively knew a lot of things that normal kids my age didn't know, and I had no explanation for how I knew them. Most prominently, I knew things about human biology that a child my age would have no knowledge of, such as menstrual periods. I was also familiar with a few US presidents when I was only beginning my kindergarten years. I was easily upset by others' suffering, and I still have a crazy sense of empathy. As I got older, and my family problems began to happen, I had this disturbingly clear image of the bigger picture in my mind, how the world would be if humans weren't so petty, if we didn't fight over every little insignificant thing. At 8 years old, I became aware of how small my existence was in the universe and how I wanted to make a difference. I wanted everything to be better, and I wanted to make people stop fighting. My parents, my relatives, my friends, everyone. I wanted the fighting to stop, and I still do. I've always had trouble telling people what I think about this, quote, bigger picture, and how so many things are insignificant to the world, while simultaneously being extremely important, and how everything is supposed to add up to something else. I'm fully aware that this all sounds like a bunch of hippie babble. I only mention it because after doing some research, I've found that other people who've claimed to be abducted have talked about warnings from their abductors. I haven't gotten any warnings, but I feel like I'm supposed to be some type of guardian. I feel like I'm meant to help people, help this planet. It's a very scary feeling. In recent years, I've actually thought about these occurrences when I started looking into alien abduction stories. Stories about weird dreams and lost hours in particular. My visions of my parents make me wonder how aliens would approach their children without alarming them. I was always bothered by words like brain and mind, as if there was something I was supposed to be hiding, and after turning 7, I hated talking about that past life I had. I stopped having these sorts of occurrences and dreams happen to me when I entered high school and began to worry about social issues instead. When I was 14, I started taking antidepressants, and almost everything relative to this story diminished because I was worrying about so many other things. But now that I'm trying to get off my medication, it's almost like all of these things are coming back and making sense with each dose lower I go. I used to blame my overactive imagination for all of this. That could still be the case, just me overthinking everything I saw, since I did used to have some hallucinations at that age. But I feel like I need to know if any of you had this experience or felt any of these things before. I may be leaving things out because I haven't thought about this for so long. So again, I ask, does anyone else have any similar experiences to this? Does anyone else remember the blue room? I would really like to know. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this week's video. If you did, remember to kill that like button down below, just kill it! And subscribe for future videos if you haven't done so already. Until next time everybody, stay safe out there. I'll be seeing you in the next video.